Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I am Barry Rowland. In this episode, we'll be reviewing the custom GT3 wheel from Precision Sim Engineering. Now, Simon has been making custom sim racing wheels for a number of years now, and I've wanted to get my hands on one to review, well, for about the same amount of time. Now, I'm finally able to put one of his creations through the SRG's review process. So, let's get to it. Now for our closer look segment on the Precision Sim Engineering GT3 custom wheel. Now this is a hand-built custom wheel. As you might imagine, at the price point it comes in at, it should be. Now, when you get this out of the box though, you know right away that you have something special in your hands. This is very tidy, it's very neatly done. Everything just kind of flows together. It's not like just somebody took a button box and stuck it on a wheel and put some coverings on it and said, look at this great custom wheel. This is really, you can tell each step of the process was well thought out, and yeah, the execution is very, very, very good, as you might imagine. Now, this is actually based on the usual or normal Sparco P310 steering wheel. I can show you a shot of it here. Of course, that one has suede leather on the rim, has a couple of buttons on each side, or a button on each side of the actual rim, and it has a 70mm pattern drilled into it with 6 holes. Now, this one, actually, you see it only has 3 holes in it. Get a little closer here for you. And this is actually a 50.8mm hole pattern, right? And again, right away, you know this is a custom ordered wheel or rim because of things like this. It's not the normal thing you would find in a speed shop on a P310, which, by the way, a P310 is a very popular wheel. It just really feels good in hand as far as the way the grips are and the way they're canted in the back. It just feels very natural when you're actually using it. It's got the nice bulges there in the handles up there. It's even got some down here that kind of grip the back of your hand when it's actually formed there and you're trying to turn it. So little things like that make the P310 a very popular steering wheel. And of course it's flat on top and flat on the bottom. Now this is actually a little thicker, I think, on the aluminum. Now the regular P310 is a 4mm aluminum plate here that obviously everything is based on and is actually the backbone or the structural piece of the steering wheel. This looks thicker though. I think it's more like 5mm, but we'll actually check that when we get to the look inside segment. Now, other than that, obviously the thing that sticks out the most here, or almost the most, is that even the way to say it, is this carbon fiber pattern, heavy duty. I guess this is some kind of a vinyl, industrial type vinyl that's got a print type thing on it. And yeah, it feels very good in hand. It almost feels a little tacky, but I've used it with gloves and just my hands, and either way it does a good job. Unlike some surfaces where they work good with your hand, but not so good with gloves because they're a little bit slick, like rubber. Some of the rubber stuff that's really got a smooth finish on it, or the other way around, it doesn't work good with your hands like suede. Even though it works, it gets matted down so bad. It works great with gloves, and gloves usually grab suede very good too. Now, I'm going to give you a close-up of this, and you can see the pattern there. And I don't know if you can tell, it's almost like got this little bit of ribbing on the actual squares there, little teeny lines in them, which give it that tactile feed back there, or tactile feel rather, that we're getting on that wheel. And you can see it's not just a vinyl stuck on with glue all the way around. We actually have some seams in here. You see that? And they're actually stitched together at that point, and over here on this other side, towards the top of the wheel, you can see the stitching on that side too. So, and of course it's glued down here on the spokes like normally you would see on a suede wheel. And yeah, very nice fitment done. There's no defects, no wrinkles in this anywhere. Again, I'm not sure how much more it costs to order one of these custom wheels from Sparco, or how many units you have to order to get qualify to get it. But yeah, it's a very nice wheel when you compare it to the normal suede one. It definitely, you can tell this is from the custom shop, or the custom division of Sparco, if that even exists. Now, of course, the thing that sticks out to me the most, and if you've seen pictures, probably a lot of people think the same thing, is this logo that's on the top of the wheel. Now, when I first saw this, I thought it was some kind of a decal or some kind of a silk screening going on, but really it's an embroidered logo. I mean, that is really nice looking. Now, it might not be everybody's cup of tea, as they say, but I really like this, and I wasn't sure I was going to. But yeah, it's raised. You can see how it's kind of raised down on the surface there. Just very nicely done. No defects in that stitching anywhere. I mean, a lot of this embroidery work you see on some things, you know, there's like these little deforms, or maybe there's a you know, a stitch that's not perfect and it's kind of got a space in between them or something. Not here. This is definitely very, very well done. Yeah, I really like this. The only drawback I can see of something like this is that if you're using just your hands, and your hands obviously oil and attracts the dirt and everything else that we can get on a steering wheel rim when we're using it. Yeah, if you're doing a lot of like rally or dirt or something, and if you're grabbing the top of this wheel a lot, chances are you're going to transfer that grease and dirt, or oil and dirt, from your hands onto there, and it's going to discolor it a bit. And even a black leather racing glove can leach a little bit of that black dye on the wheel. And so, yeah, that's the only concern I would have for that. So maybe we could put a covering on it so it won't get hurt, or it won't get dirty rather. But yeah, that's the only concern I could see with that. But I think, to me personally, and of course this is all subjective at this point, I would like to have that on my wheel, and I'll manage not to mar it up too much, because I think most of the time we're driving like this, and even when we turn, you know, we're not really grabbing the top. And if we do turn, I'm usually like doing something over here, not the very, very top of the wheel, unless you're kind of carrying it around like that, maybe. I don't know. Okay, so everything looks great as far as the rim goes. We could see the differences between the normal commercial version, I guess we could call it, of the P310. But yeah, let's talk about this button box and the buttons themselves. First off, the buttons. The buttons. You hear that? A very nice tactile click. And you can feel it with your finger. It's not just making noises. And it has a good medium spring pressure, I think, to this button. A very satisfying feel when you click it. And even with gloves on, when I was using gloves, no problem. I knew when I had clicked that button. And yeah, some buttons are very weak, and they don't have a click to them or something like that, and they don't give you a lot of feedback when you use them. I really don't like those, especially once you run across buttons like these and you're using those. It's hard to go back to the other ones that don't do much. But yeah, these are very tight buttons. I'm not moving them around. I like to wiggle buttons with my fingers just to see of course, you know, they're just stuck on a pole or a shaft that's coming out of the actual housing in the back where the electrical connections are. But yeah, there's no movement in this at all. They're all very tight. And yeah, that's the little things about a custom wheel. When you get something that costs a little bit more, you want to see this kind of thing. And yeah, this is definitely justifying to me the funds that were spent on this wheel. Now, on the buttons themselves, they have these shrouds on them, or covers, or whatever you want to call them, rings. And you can see they actually have an angle to them. See that? I guess the green ones here might show a little better. But they're very flat, and in fact, they're right at the same level as the button itself, right here. And then they get higher as you go along. And the reason, at least I think, that it's done that way is, so when you got your grip on your wheel, right, and you're like this, instead of looking down at your buttons when you want to press them, you don't have to do that. All you got to do is reach over, and yeah, you're gonna be able to feel where that button is. And as you slide your thumb over, it actually gets stopped by the high part of that housing right there, right? That shroud. So you know right away where that button is because you hit that shroud, right? And you're ready to make in fact, the motion of doing that almost clicks the button, yeah, itself right there. So even just driving and not even looking at the wheel, I'm able to find my buttons and yeah, manipulate them without any problem. And also it helps you use them as a indicator, or a locator, if you will, for other buttons that are surround them. Especially, and this is good, again, you don't want to be looking at your buttons when you're driving and racing, obviously. You want to be paying attention to what's going on the track. And especially when you have VR hoods on, yeah, you're not going to be able to see them anyway. So this is also nice where you can actually find out where that button is by where the shroud is. And even though if you don't want to press this button, I can just slide my thumb over there and feel where it is. And then I know I've got a button right next to that, and that might be the button I'm looking for, right? Now, I know you will probably develop all this muscle memory eventually, even without these shrouds. But this just enhances the speed of getting that done. So I know where that shroud is, and I know where that button is. Not only that, because I know where that button is, I also know where my switch is, right? So I can manipulate that without looking at it also. So a very neat trick with these shrouds here. The only other wheel I've had so far that had these, I believe, is the Cube Controls. They had the same kind of shroud thing going on. So again, attention to detail is what it's all about when it's custom handmade wheels, and that's what we have here. Now, let's talk about probably one of my most favorite things about this wheel is the encoders, these rotaries here. They are just the best I've had in the SRG to this date. It's just, you know, and encoders are kind of my pet peeve. It seems like they all have got, you know, the shaft is loose. If you take them and you move them around, the shaft will move, or your indentations are so close that you don't know if you know, you try to go one and it goes two or three. And they're so loose as far as the tension it takes to, or the friction it takes to actually move them or manipulate them. Yeah, it's hard to tell what you're doing. Well, these are, like I said, these are hands down the best I've had, and I'm going to try to find out who manufactures these, because these are just, the indentations are good spacing. There's the 1, 2. You can see how far it's turning when you turn it. So you can do 1, 2, 3 real quick and know exactly where it is. Not only that, but you can feel the tactile feedback you're getting from that indentation is just, or that detent is just great. You know exactly what you're doing. There's no guessing here. And yeah, again, very stiff shaft, so the tolerances between the bushing and the shaft that goes back into the actual rotary's body back there is very, very tight. And yeah, very close. Just great stuff here. I really like this, as you can tell. And not only that, they have this nice knurling on the knob itself. And you can see there's the little set screw back there that you use to take it on and off with. And you can see that knurling there. I think that shows up pretty good in the light. Right. So it's good and grippy with your fingers or if you have gloves on. So yeah, this is, I know I shouldn't be that impressed by a rotary, but these are really the best I've had my hands on so far. I really like these. Now, what else can we talk about? Oh, the switches, these momentary switches. Now, normally somebody puts a switch on, they just, you know, you're going up or down to manipulate the switch. In fact, all my button plates that I have, that's the direction they go in. But see how these decals are on here, these labels? The arrows are kind of offset. They're slanted, right? So they're going this way, or actually I'm doing it reverse. They're going this way. So you can't do this up and down with a switch. You actually they follow the arrow. See that? So you actually push in the direction of the arrow, and that's how they work. Again, you could have, you know, when they built this wheel, they could have just made it straight up and down. Don't worry about the arrows, or which way they're going. But yeah, again, a custom hand-built wheel, this is where we get the differences in when we're actually using them. And it makes it so much fun to have one. Yeah, and of course, they're very, very stiff. Not very, very stiff, but very, very tactile feeling as far as the feeling you get when you use this. So very nice, even with gloves on or whatever you may be wearing, or just fingers, you know you've made that click. No guessing here. So again, very nicely done. We've got some screen printing on the front here. I'm not sure if they do that at the Precision Sim Engineering shop, or if they actually do that at Sparco because they asked them to. Don't know. But yeah, very nicely done there. And what we'll do is actually go around to the back now. And here, of course, we have the shifters. The most important button back here, of course, is a shifter. And these are all aluminum housed units here. And we have an aluminum lever. And we, of course, they're magnetic, so they're making some noise. And this actually is a carbon fiber, as you can see, is a 3mm carbon fiber, a little bit over 3 mil paddle here. And of course, it's the big long GT unit, so you can get to, you know, your hands on it just about anywhere you are on the wheel. And they feel really good. I've never had any problem with them. They never missed any shifts. I mean, shifters, they just do what a shifter's supposed to do. And they're not real loud or real stiff on the tactile feel. We have aluminum here, but we all have the dampening factor, or the dampening property rather, of this carbon fiber paddle, which gives us a nice feel for the shifter, at least to me. If it's all carbon fiber down here too, it actually has a little bit of flex in it. It's actually quieter. It dampens it even more. And yeah, there's actually different feels to this. If this had an aluminum leather, an aluminum lever stuck on this lever here, if this was actually aluminum, it would actually be stiffer. It would almost be. I've had some aluminum shifters that were all aluminum, including the paddles. And yeah, it was almost too much tactile feedback. It almost, after a while, kind of gave me a little fatigue in the finger that was using them because they were so stiff. But these are kind of like in the middle of the road. And again, that's all personal preference. Only thing about these shifters, before I talk about that, let's look at what the kind of switch he's using. You can see the lever there on the switch, the little metal lever. And of course, that gets pressed down when we use the shifter. Only thing I would like to see on this shifter that's not here is some kind of adjustability for reach on, you know, in or out, or maybe even how much of a shift you make. There is no adjustment for that on these shifters, so it is what it is. Again, it wasn't a problem, obviously. I didn't have any problems or issues using these shifters. And I have a small hand, so yeah, you can see where my fingers are falling on them. Somebody with larger hands might actually be a little bit further, but again, I don't think you're going to have any problems as far as manipulating the shifter. And again, you don't want them to come down too far, because when you're using them, you don't want them hitting your knuckles of the fingers that are actually wrapped around the grip when you're using them, right? So yeah, never had a problem with them. They work great. Very nice units from, and again, these are made in-house at PSE. What else we want to look at here? This cable, and on the USB cable. You can see how it's actually on the back of the housing. First off, the housing has got that nice chamfering on it, and a little step down too feature from these button pods. So there's a little lip there, and then it's chamfered. Very nicely done all the way around. Again, I can't find any defects or anything wrong with the way the execution was done on this wheel. It's just, you know, quality control is very, very high. This is a cable that's actually, and you can see they machined in a hole in there where they could actually put that part of the cable in the screws and tap some holes. Very little details like that really stand out to me on the construction of a wheel as far as the quality goes. This is a 6.5 millimeter industrial, as they call it on their site, USB cable coiled, and yeah, very, very nice unit, as you might imagine. Just heavy duty all the way, like real life type of heavy duty cord you would find in a race car. Now these connectors are 5-pin units. They look a lot like the Lumbergs to me. In fact, I have, put this over here. I have a Lumberg, and it's over here. Now the pins are a little bit smaller on this Lumberg, but you can see it's very similar as far as the type of construction here. But this one is obviously a higher end unit. It's got thicker pins in it. It's got a metal sleeve here instead of plastic over this one here. I think Lumberg makes a metal sleeve one, but again, I'm not sure what this is. It has the nice knurling on it there, which is actually a little nicer than the knurling on my, let's get some focus on the Lumberg here, but you know, they still do the same job, but this has more of a pebbly type of knurling on its metal there. Very nice, very precision feeling stuff. It's just all so well done. The connector back there on the back of it is nice. And you can see we have a sticker there. It says pass, which means it passed the quality control requirements of Precision Sim Engineering. And to attach that, we've got this, which is like an aircraft quality type of connector. And this is the female end that you would put into a panel or whatever you wanted to, sticking down, so that you could actually plug your end into it like this, obviously, and then we would screw it in, a nice secure connection. This is a nice aluminum unit here. I believe this is aluminum. Let me check. Let's see. Yep, that's aluminum. I got my magnet here. And it's really a little bit of details. It's very cool here. On the back, you can see there's actually an O-ring, a rubber O-ring system there. So when we actually put this in the panel and tighten down with the 4 screws, it actually seals a watertight connection, or you know, at least a water resistant connection on that panel. So yeah, you'll have a nice, if you're throwing your beer around while you're racing, you won't have to worry about getting back here in the electricals. So again, little details like this. And this one again has a little decal on it that says pass, right? And we have a little ferrite core here for help of reducing any effects that EMI might be causing or not. And yeah, it's just all heavy duty. And you would actually take this, let's see how big this is. It looks like it's about 19.5 millimeters, this piece right here. So you would drill a hole 19.5 millimeters, or maybe you can get away with 20 millimeters. And then you would obviously feed everything through that hole, and then we'd bolt it, drill some holes for it, tap some threads, and you're done, right? Or just go all the way through with holes and use screws and bolts, or screws and nuts rather. So again, everything about this wheel kit here just screams quality, and yeah, it's all top flight, top notch stuff, and really not much else to see here. Oh, let's just take a quick look at the hub. It is a 50.8 millimeter pattern here, and you can actually see in the back there's a little bit of the PCB board that everything connects to, and I would assume there would be a PCB board in here. And it's got this little pattern to it. It's kind of flat on the top there, and then on the sides it comes down. I don't know how well that's going to show up, to a point down there where the cable is coming out, right? And then we got this little 3-ring stack pattern thing going on here for the adapter that goes on that. So we have our 50.8 millimeter, and I'll be using one of these 50.8 millimeter Q1Rs and bolt it directly to it, and we're good to go. Now there actually is a pattern here, I believe it's a 58 there, that actually is tapped already. I don't know how that's going to show up. So you could use those, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to go ahead and use these with some screws and some nuts on them, right? Again, all around this wheel, just impeccable. Everything is just, yeah, no flaws anywhere I can see. Just very, very well done. And again, like I said, I wouldn't be expecting anything less from the guys over at PSE. And what we'll do next is get to our look inside segment. Now it's time to take a look inside of this GT3 wheel. Now this will be a rather simple affair as far as separating the actual steering wheel from the button plate. And it's just 3 bolts right here, and these are M4 sized hex bolts. I believe they probably M5 threads, but we'll see that once we get it off. And yeah, just a simple matter of laying this flat and being careful not to kink our USB cord here. And this really lays flat on that 50.8 millimeter hub on the back, so it doesn't press on the shifter paddles, at least not much. It doesn't really press down. It presses pretty tight down on my bench here. So we'll go ahead and, yes, there's a nice and tight. You can hear them pop when they came open. There we go. Simple enough. At least I think it's going to be simple enough. We'll see once we get these out. Yeah, these look like 5 mil, which is typical when you're doing a, when you're bolting a steering wheel to a button plate. So yeah, it's just a 5 mil fine thread there. You guys can see that with our socket head cap bolt there. Put that aside, or actually put that in our magnetic dish. We'll go ahead and get these other 2 out real quick. They're pretty short, so there must be some spacers or something in here that are sitting very close to the top. Right, so I'm just going to carefully separate this, pull this off. There we go. There we have a steering wheel. All right. So actually, I wanted to get the steering wheel off anyway because, as I said, if you saw the closer look segment, I said that the P310 Sparco wheel, the stock one that you get with the 7 holes and the suede coverings on the grips, actually states it's 4 millimeter thick, but I think this is a little bit thicker than that. So let's see what we got here. I'll just do it right here on the center, just so that you guys see that, if we can see it. Yeah, so that's actually over 5 mil thick. So that's, let's see, a little bit over 5 mil, almost 5.5. Wow. So if the information is correct on their stock wheel, yeah, when you get one of their custom wheels, they actually beef up the spoke section here, or this metal section where everything's connected to. And yeah, more metal is not a bad thing. So yeah, 5 mil, and it's a stiff wheel, no doubt about it. Of course, a circle wheel or a whole round wheel usually is stiffer than if you get a C type that has a top cut off, right? Open top, they usually have a little bit more flex because they don't have the benefit of having the metal core piece that goes around here and connects all these spokes. Right, anything else you want to see on this wheel? You can see on the back where they've done this wrap, and it looks like they've glued it down. Now that we have this open, we can take a look at it. You can see there's actually a little bulge in the piece there, but yeah, that's not a big deal. A little bulge here. But again, not a big deal because this is resting on the button plate, and of course that's just being pressed down when that's attached. Yeah, I still like the grip on this. It's almost like a tacky feel to it, but I think that's because of this very small grooves that are cut in some of these. Again, I just don't know if that's showing up, but you might be able to see it. It's almost like it's got a little texture on top of these little squares here. Anyway, put that aside. Right, so here we go. This is the button plate, and oh, okay. There's actually, you guys can see this. Gotta love these hand-built custom wheels. This has actually got a plate that's coming off here. It's a carbon plate. I'll just slide that out like that very carefully, and you can see that it's actually, look at the cuts on this. There's very, very sharp points on them. And I can get this thing to focus here. That are fitted obviously around these button pods, right? So we got the open part here, but there's a pod, here's a pod, and of course these pieces here are cut out for the bottom parts. Very nicely done, but man, look how sharp that is. That is not easy to do on carbon fiber. I don't know if you guys ever cut carbon fiber out before, but yeah, that is a very sharp point there, very fragile, easy to break, I would imagine, in the manufacturing process. Yeah, this is very tricky to do. Yeah, must be. And you can see how we've got a little indentation over here. Yeah, this is really nicely done. And yeah, this is what you find in hand-built custom wheels. This is obviously, if we just lay the steering wheel on here, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that covers up the gaps that are between the steering wheel. You guys can see that. And the actual button plate as far as the aluminum goes. So that just fits right back in there very carefully. Like that. Very, very tight tolerances here, man. This is not easy to do. With tolerances like that, so close. Yeah, everything, it's just, again, this is, again, a testament to why these wheels cost what they do, because there's a lot of hand finishing and that goes into this product. Yeah, this is, that's crazy sharp on these points. Anyway, we'll put that aside. And let's take a look at the actual, what's going on in here. First, in the aluminum housing, you can see that there are the standoffs that are very close to the wheel, as I said before, because those screws weren't very long. And of course, those are perfectly level with the where it needs to be as far as the outside of this housing, so that when everything bolts down to where everything's nice and flat and tight and gives it all the support it needs. So yeah, these are just, again, when this was cut out of CNC or CNC'd out of that one piece of aluminum, these were left in for the standoffs for supporting the steering wheel, making everything very, very solid and stable. Right, so in the electrical connection, we can see down here we have a little breakout board for the USB cable on the back. You can see it's kind of curling around here and going towards the back, coming out the back of our cable gable management here. Actually, this is actually going to the back of the board though. Our cable gable management is coming out the back here. You see that there. So that's where the plug is for the little board. Again, very nicely done, not just stuck in or glued on. You can see it has two little cap head screws there that actually screwing it into the aluminum plate. So yeah, I like to see that kind of stuff. Everything's very neat and tidy here. You can see this is the main USB conversion board. Really doesn't have a lot as far as identifying marks on it. And yeah, this is just the chip here that does the USB conversion, right? And of course we have 4 plugs over here. So this looks like it would be very easy to work on if we needed to replace a switch or something like that. Speaking of which, these pods here that are holding the switches are attached directly. They are aluminum. The housings here, that's aluminum. You can see the little line in it there that attaches to the main back plate here. Now, they attach with screws, and we can't see the screws, but I'll take my magnet, and you can see that this is all aluminum housing here. But if I put my screw here, or rather my magnet there, you can see it's sticking on the outside of that decal, which I'm pretty sure that means there is a screw right there. And if I take my finger, I really can't feel it though. But this is very thick decal material. It's almost like a plastic film, if you will. So yeah, I really like what they're doing with that. Let's see, I got a screw here. I know that. I don't have anything here, so you can see it won't stick. It'll fall off. So we'll keep going. And there's a screw, okay. So it's sticking up there. So I have a screw there. And yep, there's another one there. So there's 3 screws, it looks like, holding this housing on. Now, I'm not going to pull those out because obviously I got to pull the decals off, and I certainly don't want to do that unless I really have to go in here and do some kind of replacement of a switch or something. But it's not going to be easy to see. You can see there is a cable here, right, that goes to the main board. Obviously, there's another little circuit board underneath here, and I don't think we're going to be able to see it very well. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that, but there is a circuit board under there that the other, obviously, end of the cable is plugging into, and it is servicing these 2 buttons and these great encoders here. So each one of these pods is going to have a screw, same deal down here. You can see it standing right on there. So yeah, 3 screws there. I got a screw here, it looks like, on this one. See it standing up? Probably at the top, and there it is. Probably just 2 here, I think. Yeah. And so again, it's really not easy to see what's going on underneath there without actually pulling them off. But I don't think we have to. It's pretty, you can imagine that there is another PCB board in here that these switches are actually probably soldered to. Maybe not the little switch here, because it's actually hanging down a little bit lower. I'm trying to get a look at that. In fact, it looks like, yeah, it looks like, and I don't know how well that, you just can't see this stuff the way it sits, but it looks like this switch here is actually sitting on its own little PCB board there that's attached to the aluminum housing. Everything is very, very securely attached, very sturdy, everything here. And of course, that lends to very good tactile feedback on the switches and on these, you know, or rather the buttons and the switches themselves. And of course, the encoders. Yeah, super encoders. I really like these. And yeah, there's not much else to see as far as a look inside here. All quality, very tidy. And again, this is what we should see and expect at the price point that this custom wheel comes in at. Yeah, very nicely done. I think anyone that would see that would say that. That's just, yeah, I like what I'm seeing here. And yeah, not much else to see. Right, so I think the shifters are coming in. Yeah, if we look at the back here, where the shifter cable's coming in, you can actually see the back of the circuit board right there, where they are actually attaching to the back of that circuit board. Right? Instead of coming around, which is very neat. That means we got two sides of the circuit board where plugs are. And, you know, obviously a custom design board by the Precision Sim Engineering guys. And yeah, so that's attached on the back. And now we have the rest of the stuff attached on the front. I mean, again, very, very tidy job there. Right. So yeah, not much else to see here as far as a look inside. And what we'll do next is obviously put this back together. And then I'm going to put my 50.8 Q1R wheel side adapter, quick release adapter on there. And we'll come back and see how that looks. So now we have the quick release attached to the back, and I'll show you guys how this went on. Now remember, when I showed you this hub in the closer look, there's actually 3 holes that are straight through, and there are 3 holes that were threaded. I wasn't sure how deep those holes went, but I found some cap screws. You can see there. I've got one on each side there and one on the bottom here, and they went all the way in without touching anything, so I was able to get this tightened on with just these cap screws, which is very nice. Didn't have to use the through holes and use a bolt and then a nut on the other side of it, which works just as well, really, in the end of the day. In fact, I could add that if I wanted to add more bolts to this, but I think 3 is going to do it here. I don't think we're going to have any issues. So what we'll do now is go ahead and go over to the rig, go ahead, obviously, and mount this to the direct drive wheel we're using, and I'm going to set this up, but I'm probably just going to use zip ties or something, because obviously I'm not going to be drilling a hole in my rig yet or in a plate, but we'll talk about that once we get over to the rig. All right, we have the wheel mounted to the cockpit now on our direct drive motor, and it's looking good. The USB cable is actually wrapping around the bottom, kind of hanging off the bottom here, and I decided just to do that instead of wrapping around the top, just because this is a temporary mount. You can see I've got it zip tied over here. Yeah, there's the zip tie. And the rest of it's kind of hanging out the back. Where is it? There it is. Right. And the cool thing is I've got plenty, and I'm going to dress this up a little bit. This cable's obviously not going to be hanging in front of my accelerator pedal. But it's a over 6 feet. It's a 3-meter cable here, or rather a 2-meter cable here. So it's a little over 6 feet. And that gives it plenty of room to reach all the way back to my PC, which is a very great thing. You see the other part hanging down there. Now, if I was going to install this, I would probably do something similar. You can see the lumbar connector I have here. I'm actually going to show you another shot of this and a direct on shot. And yeah, you can see that, yeah, this is a carbon fiber plate here. And I have 2 holes in the wider part here that actually goes over to where the channel is in this profile. And 2 bolts obviously holding it on, and that's the female part of the lumbar connector. I would do something similar with this, right? So we could actually take this flat part here and mount it into something like this, just like we see here. Easy enough, so yeah, no problems there. And yeah, I have to say the wheel's looking pretty good here, sitting up here on this SS2 Bodner system. And yeah, all we have to do now is get in and give this wheel a go and see what we think. So here we are in iRacing in the Ferrari 488 GT3 car. And we're at the ring, of course, in case you didn't know. And first off about this steering wheel, it is a fairly stiff wheel for a round wheel like this. And it's a large wheel, 310 millimeters. Most of these you can get a lot of flex in them, but I think the stiffness is because of the sum of the parts here coming together as an entire unit. What I mean by that is this custom wheel that's been ordered from Sparco, actually, as you may have seen in the closer look or look inside, is a 5mm thick aluminum that they're using on this particular steering wheel, where their normal P310, at least according to their site, I haven't had one in my hands, is 4mm thick. So that, obviously, another millimeter of thickness in this aluminum plate here where the hub is and the spokes are formed is going to make a difference, no doubt. And of course we have this really nicely CNC aluminum button plate that it comes from the guys at PSE that has those nice aluminum standoffs that are left in there that we directly bolt the steering wheel to. So it comes together, I think, as one nice cohesive unit that just gives you a nice stiff feel that I'm not used to feeling with usual round wheels, 320mm, 330, that kind of thing. Anyway, so yeah, you can tell right away, I think I can anyway, that there is a difference in the stiffness quality here. Now, let's talk a little bit about the rim itself. And yeah, this is an oval. This is an oval, and it's square at the top and the bottom, as you know. And it's great for just about all cars, I think. You can actually, this is a good universal type of shape that you can use in a lot of wheels. And of course, we know the P310 is a very popular wheel anyway with a lot of racers in real life. And yeah, this is something that you can use for all cars. The only place I felt kind of out of sorts, I mean, I did rallies, I did dirt car, I did ovals, trucks and cars, and the only place you feel a little bit out of sorts is when you're like in the formula cars, the fast open wheelers. And even though obviously you can drive with this wheel in those cars, it'd be nicer, I think, if you had a smaller wheel diameter, like anywhere between 280 and 300, and of course it was the open top type, like a C shape. And yeah, that's a little bit more intuitive when you're driving those cars. But again, you can drive any car you want to, or truck you want to, with a wheel like this. Now, let's talk about the buttons on this. Now, the buttons are very crisp. They have a nice click to them. And if you saw the closer look, I was actually trying to move them sideways a little bit, see if there's any play on them as far as lateral sideways play. And there's minimal, if any, play in these buttons. They're very tight buttons. And that scheme kind of goes along with everything else here. The momentary switch is very tight. And there's really, there's going to be some movement in a momentary switch no matter which one you get, because obviously it has to go back and, up and down when you use it. So there's going to be some play in there around the center. But yeah, this has, about the best as far as play goes. And again, this is lending itself to the component selection that Simon has used on his wheels. And of course, I like the shrouds, as I saw before, because the shrouds stop your finger from traveling and gives you an easy reference point of where your finger is as far as the button is concerned. Now, probably the best thing I like about this wheel, and only because it's the best one I felt, is the rotaries here. The rotary encoders are just super, really nice. Like I said before, probably the best ones I've ever had my fingers on. And the reason is, and of course this can be very subjective, obviously, but yeah, the very good detents, rather, not indentation, but detents on the spacing is very good, I think, as far as the travel before you hit the next detent. The friction is very good, so it takes to me anyway, the right amount of effort to move from one detent to another, which makes it very intuitive, and you don't go past that detent into another one accidentally. In the heat of a race, that can be very important when you're trying to make an adjustment. And of course, there's like no play on the shafts of these rotaries, which is very impressive indeed. So overall component selection here, hats off to Simon here. I'm sure he had to go through a lot of losers before he came up with this winning combination of switch and encoder and button selection. I really like the way these button pods are raised off of the back of this button plate. So they're actually come in towards you, and they're higher than the actual plate or the flat part of the hub here on the steering wheel, which of course just makes it a little bit easier to reach your buttons when they're punched out towards you that way, instead of just being flat on a button plate that's sitting behind the wheel. Little things like that make a difference, and it's, you wouldn't really notice it if you're just looking at a picture of the wheel, but in use, I can tell right away it's just easier to reach buttons on this wheel. The shifters on the wheel, the PSE shifters, aluminum with the carbon GT panels, just great stuff. Very clicky and a lot of tactile feedback from them, as most magnetic shifters are, of course. And I like the way that we have the carbon paddle on the aluminum arm because I've had some aluminum paddles on aluminum shifters that almost felt a little bit harsh when you used them. And yeah, this using the carbon actually dampens some of that aluminum stiffness. Aluminum stiffness is good, but yeah, it can, after a long day of shifting, kind of wear on your fingers. So I think it's a good balance there for those shifters, and the shifters work quite well. Never had any problem with them. Everything worked just fantastically. So yeah, not that much else to talk about with the wheel here. It's just a great wheel, as you might imagine. And yeah, I'm just happy to get a chance to use it. And it's got a lot of fine details in here that I really like, including that USB cable. Very, very thick. And of course, you see it's kind of bobbling there on the connector because I don't have it secured. But again, this is a demo wheel somebody sent me that I'm doing the review on, so I'll be sending it back. Anyway, kudos to Precision Sim Engineering for producing a high-end wheel like this. It's a very expensive wheel, indeed, but again, they're targeting the serious sim racing enthusiast with this wheel, or a racing team maybe, or something like that. But yeah, you have a wheel like this, it's definitely going to be something that lasts a long time, I think, from what we saw so far in the review here. So what we'll do next is, yeah, just get on to the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the GT3 wheel from Precision Sim Engineering. Simon has been making custom sim racing wheels for a number of years now, and his experience shows when you have one of his wheels in hand. Truly a custom result. Features that you only see in a hand-assembled wheel, like the Sparco wheel with a heavy carbon weave styled vinyl grip wrap and a nicely done Sparco embroidered logo. The button plate housing precisely machined from a single piece of aluminum, with chamfering and seams in all the right places. I like the way the separate button pods are implemented here, raising the buttons and switches and rotaries past the plane of the rim's center plate. This provides an easy access to all the controls, and nice finishes like a heavy decal material and the complex carbon fiber trim plate that gives a nice reveal between the rim's hub, spokes, and the aluminum button plate. The buttons on this wheel have a good tactile feel to them, as do the momentary switches. The rotaries are really what I would consider the best I have tried so far in the SRG, with nicely spaced detents and what seems like to be just the right amount of friction when turning it, and no play in the shafts. The PSE shifters are all top-flight kit, providing a nice tactile click with every shift. Machined from aluminum and mated to a GT-sized carbon paddle, still, I would have liked to see some kind of adjustment feature for the paddle's lateral motion or position. The hub that you will attach a quick release to is a 50.8 millimeter pattern. So, if you use 70 millimeter patterned wheel side quick releases, you will need to get the available adapter that PSE makes. Now, at 895 pounds sterling, which converts to around $1,120, this wheel is expensive, and certainly intended for the serious sim racing enthusiast that only want the best for their driving experience. And the GT3 wheel from Precision Sim Engineering, in my opinion, does deliver in that regard. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.